Welcoming you back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brenden here for BeaversEdge.com, joined by Beavers Edge writer and KAGO radio host TJ Mathewson here for this week of the Beavers Edge podcast. We're back following Oregon State's win over Washington State, 24-10 at Reser Stadium for homecoming weekend. Oregon State improves to 5-2, 2-2 overall in the Pac-12 after dropping their first two. They've now won two straight, and now they return to Reser Stadium this Saturday, the second part of a two-game homestand to face Colorado before having their bye week at about the roughish midpoint of the season. So again, Brenden Slaughter here for BeaversEdge.com, joined by TJ Mathewson. TJ, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. Didn't be honest, Brenden, did not get to watch much of Saturday's game. Was in section 310 at T-Mobile Park for 6 hours and 22 minutes. Now, if the Mariner game only went 9 innings, I could have gotten home and watched the entire Beaver game.
Yes.
But I didn't get to. But nonetheless, my prediction from last week on our predictions came true again, 7-0.
Yep.
7-0 picking on
winner
the
over there,
this year.
TJ Mathewson, folks.
I know.
You gotta take his picks to Vegas, man. Take TJ's picks to Vegas.
I said, they're at home. Defense is going to play great. And what did they do? 10 points.
Exactly that.
There we go.
Yeah, it was obviously a big.
And it might be less this week. We'll see.
It was obviously a big win for Oregon State, and we're going to get into it, TJ. But real quick, I just have to ask about your experience. I'm not going to make you relive it because it was tough. And I've talked to some Mariner fans. It was tough, man. It was a tough way to go out. But I have to ask, when did the beer sales shut down? And did you notice a significant change in the fan attitude after the beer sales got shut down?
Well, they stopped at the same time they always do in the 7th. And I don't think they opened back up. They usually close concessions around then, too. So when a game goes twice as long as it's normally supposed to, right now, even if you ate in like the 3rd inning, like you still have 15 innings with no food, right? So, I think everyone was a little even despite that fact, Brenden, there were about 44,000 people who stayed all 18 innings.
Impressive.
I'm dead serious. It was
impressive
for 6 hours and 22 minutes, which, that happens in the regular season, which it won't anymore with the new extra inning rules. I mean, that doesn't happen. It was kind of a surreal atmosphere to see, and something, kind of felt like a dream when you were there for the first time, but it was cool. I did stay from the start. I did not eat at the ballpark. You're asking about beer or food. I did not eat at the ballpark. Wow. I ate breakfast before I got there, and then did not eat again until we got home about 12 hours later. So man, it was a little brutal.
Yeah,
it was a long day, but it was a pretty good atmosphere. Again, was hoping to get home and watch some of the Beaver game after the game, because if it would have ended at a normal time, say 4:30, 5 o'clock, easily could have seen it. But I did not. But it was cool. A good experience. A pretty heartbreaking loss, not gonna lie, but it was good. And my voice is starting to get back to normal levels after it was evaporated for the last 48 hours.
No doubt. Well, let me tell you, TJ, what else was an awesome atmosphere, and that was Reser Stadium on Saturday, as Oregon State had another sellout crowd of sorts. Felt very similar to the USC game as far as, the energy in Reser. The student section was packed. Jonathan Smith made note of it in his post-game press conference and, mentioned, the last couple games, our Pac-12 teams have had to come out and do their warm-ups. Our student section is already packed and filled to the brim, before the game starts. And, that electricity that we saw against USC was, resulted in a win, obviously this weekend. And I think it was huge for Oregon State to kind of build off of what we saw positively against Stanford. You and I talked at this podcast last week about how there was a weird sentiment. It maybe didn't feel like a 100% like true, hey, you really dominated and won out their win. It kind of felt like one you maybe lucky to dodge a bullet on. Then you come back home, TJ, and there's no doubt about this one. Oregon State clearly outplayed Washington State. It shows up in the scoreboard, and it showed with the fact that, the Beavers really weren't, once they got up, they played the game their way. They played safe, conservative football, a strong run game, and really got after Cam Ward, which I remember you mentioning last week was going to be, a big key. We both did, and, forced Washington State to be one-dimensional, and, now sit 2-2 in conference and 5-2 overall as a result.
And if you're a Beaver fan, you really like to see this because there's a pretty good chance you're going into the bye week bowl eligible, which
Yes, sir.
how many times have you been able to say that in the last 10
Right.
years? Not too many, not quite as many times. So it's refreshing to see. And again, in a game you're favored, you come out and you play significantly better. And it wasn't even sort of like a great game for Oregon State. The defense played very well. The running game was good. The offense overall, though, was it was fine. Ben Goldbranson was
good word.
it was fine, right? He completed half of his passes. So that's not the best thing in the world. He threw a very nice touchdown to Anthony Gould, which seemed like a mistake at the time, but he made a pretty nice catch on that football.
Was it to Anthony Gould, or did he just happen to be in the right spot at the right time? I still think.
Well, he was running that direction and he caught it, so I'd say good enough.
Yeah, you mentioned when you talked to Anthony Gould yesterday, he was like, "We're all kind of bunched together, but I just kind of made a play." And I'm like, I don't know who Ben was going to on that one, TJ.
Yeah, not sure either, but he caught it, and I think that's all that matters. It's all that people really care about in that sense. And again, this defense at home, and you listen to the interviews from today being Wednesday. This podcast will post Thursday, so you go back to yesterday to listen to the defense. And I asked them hey, why is this why do you think you guys play so much better at home? Significantly too. I mean, you look at the three games they played at home this year. USC just went on the road and scored 42 points at Utah and probably should have won that game. That's a really, really good offense. Yeah. They scored 17 points here. Boise State has turned it around this year on offense, and they're playing very well on offense this year. Bachmeier's transferred, so it's now I think Talon Green's the starting quarterback there.
Yeah.
But they've turned it around offensively, and they've been really good. They turned the ball over. They threw 4 interceptions. Turned the ball over 4 times at least. I can't remember the exact number. And then Wazoo comes in here. Yeah, and then Wazoo comes in here with a pretty good offense, pretty decent. So. Cam Ward, a pretty talented but inconsistent quarterback, and they score 10 points. He completes less than half his throws. Yeah. And it's just significantly better than what we've seen from them on the road, and they're going to get another chance against really just an atrocious offensive team this coming Saturday against Colorado. We'll get into the numbers a little bit on that. But, a lot of what they said, it's just the energy, and I guess that makes sense. But it's just kind of puzzling why they can't bring just a little semblance of the success on the road, just a little bit.
Well, there's one thing I have to appreciate, right? And that was Trent Bray, being, and, not to say that the old defensive coordinator wasn't, real, as I would say, but I appreciated Trent Bray today when he was, you asked him about that, and he kind of mentioned, Utah being a really tough place to play. And then he goes, well, Stanford, there's no environment. And I'm like, ooh, not bad, TJ. Kind of threw a little bit of shade there. But, maybe the mitigating circumstances, I get it, right? You don't want to have any excuses ever. But the fact that Trent Bray, open and honestly was there's no energy in Stanford and Utah was intense. I don't know. I found that kind of interesting when he mentioned it the way that he did, Yeah,
it's interesting. But when you think about great defenses, now we don't know if Oregon State's defense is great. They play pretty darn well at home. We know that much. Great defenses travel everywhere.
Yeah.
Offense doesn't travel quite as well. Defense does.
Sure.
And I'm curious to see. There will be some different tests. I'm looking forward to after the bye. That will be a real offensive measuring stick. Washington's been kind of underwhelming this year overall. Maybe not underwhelming, a little inconsistent, and especially not great on defense. But their offense, we know, I think they're the number 1 yardage offense in college football. So that's kind of another thing. Hey, you need energy. There's going to be energy at Husky Stadium. There's always energy at Husky Stadium. So it'd be kind of curious to see. But it's just we just now have these defined points of the defense is just that much better at home. Just a significant level better at home than it is on the road.
Right. And I don't want to harp on the games beforehand, but then, you think about maybe why the defense didn't play. Fresno State game, I almost kind of attribute that just to I think that Jake Haener is a good player, and I don't think the Beavers had quite gelled on that side of the ball yet. Then you go to Utah, TJ, you almost talk about how the defense kept them in that game, but it's almost you never want to say that a team, kind of changes its mentality. But after, Chance Nolan throws 2 picks in the first 3 drives, one of them being a pick six, after you had gotten, they forced Utah to punt a fair number of times in that game. It wasn't like, first drive, Utah just, go, guns a-blazing kind of a thing, and they rolled up some 40-some points. No, like Oregon State's defense didn't play – I still maintain didn't play horribly, just had those interceptions. So I think
they kept him in the game, but maybe thinking in the sense of where's that game-changing turnover? Like where's something that's going to set your offense up in a good spot?
Right.
Yeah, it hasn't been there. And it wasn't even really there against Stanford. And you mentioned the energy, but Tanner McKee was throwing pretty well in the first half of that game, in the first, in the third quarter as well. Which was not what we've seen from the Beavers at home, where no one really gets that volume yardage. I mean, you can look at Cam Ward. He threw for 350, 345, but he threw the ball 54 times.
Yeah.
So when you throw the ball that many times, you're going to get some yardage.
Yeah.
But it's just it'll be something to see. I mean, again, if they that next step, that ceiling we talk about is, some of these home performances going to have to go on the road. It's going to have to happen.
I agree wholeheartedly. And, it's going to be interesting to see in the second half, like you said, because I think there's some road games to kind of really show that, right? So it's like you think about a matchup with Arizona State, game you should win, right? A matchup with Washington, very, up there as far as, being able to, like you said, it's a winnable game. So I think those could be some good measuring sticks, after the bye week. But yeah, again, like I said, certainly a little bit to nitpick, as you said, specifically, we've talked about the defense. I thought the defense played well. It wasn't perfect, but played, pretty well. They were really after Cam Rising, excuse me, because I mentioned him, Cam Ward. And, it seemed to me like their scout was great. They knew what he was going to throw. Some of his little dink and dunk passes off to the side or, kind of delayed reaction kind of a thing. They played really good, got after him. I think we definitely had a season high in sacks. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many sacks the most it had been since, but really harassed Cam Ward, and we're able to kind of get a finale performance as opposed to Caleb Williams at home, where he was able to elude. Ward was able to elude a lot less, so I think that's kind of growth for defense. But offensively, TJ, like you said, I would kind of describe it as you did, a ho-hum game. I don't think Oregon State, rocked anybody's socks off with their offensive performance in this game. I think it was consistent, control the clock. We've got a run game that's working. Don't take very many chances or shots. And, that's what we saw. And, whether or not, we unfortunately didn't get to talk to offensive coordinator Brian Lindgren this week. So, as of Wednesday, we're not sure if Chance Nolan has returned to practice or not. As of Monday, he hadn't cleared protocol yet per Jonathan Smith. But, based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks, TJ, not to say that Ben Goldbrinson can improve, but I still think like Oregon State's offense is just really capped at how good they can be until Chance Nolan gets back.
Yeah, and hearing some of our callers and here at the station, especially getting that fresh post-game reaction. Again, I host the post-game show every week after games, and people will call in. And a lot of what they asked for, I don't know if it's an exact, this is from just off of memory, is that they sort of wanted the offense dialed back a little bit, just to mitigate the turnovers. So when you dial the offense back, this is what you get.
Right.
And the thing is, it will work against, with a good roster that you have, it will work against worse teams. Now, Bo Nix and the 10th-ranked Oregon Ducks come in here in the final week of November. Will that work? Say no, it will not.
No. I'll say pretty confidently it won't.
And it won't. It probably wouldn't work on the road against Washington, a team that can score points.
Agreed.
It might not work on the road down in Tempe. A bad team.
Yeah.
It's pretty subpar team, but they have some talented skill players on offense. They can score some points as well.
They have a little life now too. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. Will it work? Is it sustainable? This is not college football or pro football from 15 years ago. It's not. You
Right.
need to score points to win games. And when your defense allows only 10 points, you can win these games. But if you have your defense has a bad night, this sort of offensive approach, it's not sustainable. And especially with a guy as talented as Ben,
right.
It's sort of like as you mentioned, capping what they can do. And like there is stuff there to do, but it like running it like this is it holds everyone back.
Right. And well, I mean, again, I guess that's the thing we're looking at is, in the immediate future, because I agree with everything you just said. The immediate future then becomes, will it work against Colorado? I certainly think so. And if for what it's worth, if Chance Nolan's not back by Washington, we've been lied to about his injury.
Probably. It sounded though. So when he comes out, it's a neck strain. They say
Right.
neck strain, right? I believe. I don't know if Jonathan said it, but it got floated through sources to Twitter that it was a neck strain.
Yes.
But he's in the protocol.
But then it had been reported that he was in concussion protocol. Yes, correct.
Right.
Again, at least what's been reported. As we know, what Jonathan's confirmed.
I was going to say, as we know with concussion protocol, we really have no idea.
No.
Just give it a look at the Tua situation. I mean,
it's important. Got to be safe. Got to be safe.
It is important. It is important, but it doesn't seem like this stuff. It's just so hard to like read and
right.
I don't even know. Right, like it's inconsistent. It seems like for what it is, but for this, it seems like we're Colorado this week. Take a bye, and Chance should be back by Washington. You would think.
And I think that's got to be Oregon State's mentality and plan is, I think, if you can make it one more week, right? You get through Colorado, who, as we mentioned, we'll get into it. It's like bad bingo. TJ and I can take our pick on what stat to pick to show how bad Colorado is. So again, Oregon State, as long as they, don't, stay in Albany where their hotel is, the night before, Oregon State should be, in a pretty good spot to take this one home. And then, you take the bye week, obviously, and then you prepare for, that kind of, I'm not going to say second half because they would have already played 8 games by then, but you kind of prepare for that, home stretch. The bye week, I think, comes at a great time this year, especially with where, Oregon State's schedule is, TJ. And, just again, as far as potential, I just think we saw last week, Oregon State can win games with their running game and kind of being safe in the pass game. But with Chance Nolan, you allow yourself to become such a more, I just want to say dynamic offense as you have the threat to run from the quarterback. He's a little bit more mobile in the pocket. And now that we see, Jack Velling coming along, maybe he can be a little bit more of a downfield threat. I just think Nolan is a lot more comfortable as a downfield passer. Who knows? Maybe he surprises us all and could play Saturday. I mean, the timing, it's in the mix, right? If TJ said protocol usually is somewhere about 2 weeks-ish, a week-ish. We don't know. Everything's changing in that regard. Got to be uber safe after, like TJ said, a national incident that, definitely brought the attention to the issue. But, all in all, I think Oregon State should roll in this game against Colorado, TJ. I mean, I think, we saw this last week, Mike Sanford Jr., really ignite the Colorado fan base, ignite the team, and, beat a Cal team. And we even were talking about it on BeaversEdge. And, folks were looking ahead to the game and whatnot. And, I kind of made my point that because Oregon, every year is different, but because Colorado was the game last year that led to Tim Tibesar getting fired and was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as, losing to a team you shouldn't have lost to, particularly defensively, because Cal was the week before. I just had this game circled as a win all year, TJ, for that reason. Like Oregon, Trent Bray in particular is going to really want to draw up a fun defense for this game just to, maybe show he was the right guy for the job. You know what I mean? Am I off base there?
No, I don't think so. And I think I don't think there's any place in this game where Oregon State is disadvantaged. Not a single spot on either roster. I mean, Colorado had a lot of exodus in the transfer portal, most notably Brenden Rice gone. He went to USC. But I want people to kind of just don't get too nervous about the outcome last week. I mentioned it to Brenden before we started recording. Right. let's look at Colorado's win last week from the Cal perspective. This is not to take any away from Mike Sanford, and getting a win in his first game as an interim head coach, and Carl Durrell getting fired. $8.7 million in the buyout, by the way, for Carl Durrell. It's a good chunk of change for a Pac-12 school.
TJ, you sure you and I can't change our career and try to be football coaches? I mean, all we got to do is get one gig, dude. Then we can shut it down, get fired.
There is no better career path than being a failed failed Power 5 college football coach, because you just get paid to do nothing.
Yeah, just give me a call, TJ. Great. I'll be your defensive coordinator when you get hired, bro. Just give me a call.
That'll be great.
Just give me a call.
That'll be great. Okay. Brenden, what is Justin Wilcox's record against teams that have started the season 0-5 or worse?
I believe you said 0-3 or 0-4.
That is correct. 0-3. And how many points a game does Cal average in those games?
15. I don't remember the points. As well.
Cut it in half. 7.7 points a game in 3 games against teams that have started 0-5 or worse.
Wow.
That is a mind-blowing stat.
Wow.
A mind-blowing stat. Also, where's the other stat? 1-4 in the last 2 seasons against teams that have fired their head coach.
Wow.
In that season. So I would like to just reel in and sort of say maybe Colorado's win last week was a little bit less because of Colorado, who managed to only score 13 points in regulation, by the way.
Yeah.
To the fact that Cal, against really atrocious teams in Justin Wilcox's tenure, have been really bad.
Yeah.
bad.
I think that's a tremendous stat, TJ. And I also kind of compare it to where Oregon State was when they, fired, mutually parted ways, whatever you want to call it, with Gary Lee Anderson. So it's whatever you want to call it. That first game, right? Corey Hall comes in, and Corey Hall, no experience as a head coach, coming from the defensive back room. And, Oregon State plays a Stanford team that year and that week, TJ, that was before Stanford fell off, right? 2017, Stanford was still really, maybe not really good, but very good. And
they won the North that year, did they not? I think they did.
Yeah, because Oregon was a non-factor that year with Willie Taggart. And I would assume it could have been Washington, actually, or Washington State. I'm not familiar on those.
I think it
standings.
Was it not? It was not Stanford USC in the title game in that year. I think it was.
It could have been. It could have been
the Bryce Love year. I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're right. Don't quote me on it, because, like I said, 5 years ago is a little hazy now, it seems. But regardless, that game itself, Oregon State went up toe-to-toe with a great Stanford team. And if it wasn't for, and apologies to you, Ryan, if you're listening, if it wasn't for a Ryan Nall fumble in the very end of the game that basically allowed Stanford to, flip the script and win the game, Corey Hall and the Beavers were in line to win that game. And, you talk about how I think any team, regardless of situation and circumstance, TJ, they can hype up and play really great football when a sudden change happens, and maybe play above their talent level, above where they've been playing that year. But then taking it on the road, like I don't think we're going to see the same Colorado team we saw last week, and I don't really think it's going to be close.
Yeah, and it was homecoming at Colorado last week.
Exactly.
They sold the stadium out, which is just
they stormed the field, man.
For an 0-5 football team that they got over 50,000 people to Boulder. That's just a crazy number. The new interim defensive coordinator, I don't think I wrote his name down, but they made a lot of changes to their defense last week from what they were running, because they fired the defensive coordinator as well with Carl Durrell, and they changed a lot with that defense. I think they added a new position on the defense as well. We were talking to Brian Howell on our show, on the Joe Beaver show this week, and he was sort of just shedding a little bit of light on that. So they really changed a lot in their defense, which they probably needed to, because they were allowing, before last week, 294 rushing yards per game.
Yeah.
294. Wow. That's a lot. That's a pretty good number if you're passing for that many yards a game, let alone running for that many yards. And I think they only allowed I wrote it down somewhere. They allowed like 30 yards net last week. 30,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, some big time changes. And I actually there's if you want to head over to BeaversEdge.com, our closer look at Colorado this week has a little bit of a snapshot at Colorado's defensive stats, and the shift, TJ, from allowing what they allowed the week before to Arizona to what they allowed against Cal was like the third or fourth like quickest or biggest like shrink, you know what I'm trying to get at, like biggest shrink in like margin or whatever in like recent years. So I thought that was significant. But again, for all those reasons I just said, real quick, had to fact check myself. TJ, you were right. USC over Stanford in that Pac-12 championship game. And it was actually Oregon State's second game with Corey Hall as interim where they lost to Stanford by a point. But, then Oregon State's, rails started to kind of go off the rails from the rest of the season that on. So I think it can be hard to maintain. And like you said, the fact they stormed the field, and again, never going to, disparage a school for storming the field. But you talk about it like Colorado, it's almost like they put, their Super Bowl into that game last week, TJ. Yeah. And it's like, will you be able to play that at that high of a level again if you're Colorado? I don't think so.
I think they should have ripped the goalposts out and threw them in the river.
Do they have a river? Now I'm bad. Do they have a river that runs through Boulder, TJ? I don't know.
I'm going to look on a map. Let's look on a map. You keep talking. I'll spy on a map.
Yeah, I'm like, we need to see if the river runs through Boulder. But, regardless, again, just kind of starting to put a bow tie on the matchup with Colorado. Like TJ and I were saying, take your pick, right? There's Colorado was a horrible football team until they fired Karl Dorrell, right? They get a little bit of momentum with Mike Sanford last week. But if Oregon State plays like they're capable of, and, we see even just what we saw last week, which was, that real
Boulder Creek is right next to Folsom Field.
Okay, so that works, right? So maybe they should have.
Does work. There's also a couple of lakes.
A couple lakes nearby. Yeah, so get creative, right? Just strap them to your back and walk out to the middle of the lake, right?
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. I don't see this as, I'm kind of like with you, what you said, TJ, and we had Mike Parker on Rip City Mornings this week too, and he kind of said the same thing, kind of being a little bit nervous for this game. I just don't have that feeling ahead of this game. I don't see this as a game that Oregon State's going to lose, and not to say that it can't, but I think Jonathan Smith is going to have his team really ready to go, and I think Oregon State's going to be sitting 6-2, 3-2 in Pac-12 heading in the bye week. TJ, I mean, pretty sweet.
There might be a little more concern if you're on the road, but you're not even on the road. You're at home, right?
Where the Beavers
we just talked about how much better the defense is at home, and you look at even with these sort of renewed energy on offense and such last week, they scored 13 points in regulation. 13 at home. Right. So there's no real number here that, 124th total offense, over 100th in both rushing and passing offense, 98th in sacks allowed, 119th in third down conversion, 124th in passing efficiency, 119th in yards per completion, and then on defense, 19th in rushing. That should be 119th, probably 124th in total defense. There's just nothing there. They don't sack the quarterback. They don't tackle guys for loss. Take your pick, right? Where's the thing to be nervous? Will they cover the 24-point spread?
That honestly,
if Chance Nolan was playing, maybe. If they, really go conservative in this game plan to say, hey, we're just trying not to turn the ball over, maybe they won't. But, there is 24 points of difference between these two rosters without question. I don't even think that's a question.
I agree.
The talent gap is at least 24 points, if not more.
Now, granted, would Oregon State have been better off to play, Cal or play Colorado while Karl Dorrell was still head coach? Absolutely. No question, right?
Yes,
Karl Dorrell was,
without a doubt.
He was packing it in and ready for the buyout, man. He gonna be on a beach somewhere. And personally, I don't blame him, man. That's got to be everybody's dream, right? I want to be done with my career at 50-something and be like, I just got the millions coming in, man. But neither here nor there. You look at, just Colorado's record this year and their results, TJ. Colorado's top like their season high in points is 20, right? So let's just say they have another game like that, just play great. Oregon State's only scored less than 20 once this year, and that was the USC game. So it's like, even if Oregon State played a really bad game, I would still like their chances to win in this game. And I think you just talk about last week, Cal, I think, way overlooked Colorado, and I don't think they, gave them the proper respect and deserve they get for an interim coach playing at home in a sellout kind of a game. And I'll give them credit. They packed Folsom Field for a bad football team, and that makes a difference, right? We're talking about how much of a difference it makes here at Reser Stadium. But like TJ said, with Reser Stadium, another, good crowd expected. Oregon State having some momentum, the looking ahead and seeing that they get a little bit of a reprieve. When you talk to, Brandon Kipper on Tuesday, TJ, he was like, get this win, get a little bit of a chance, take a step back, heal up, breathe, catch your breath, and then gear up for, that second kind of stretch of games. And I think this is shaping up well for Oregon State. They go in, take care of business against Colorado. I think 24 is a little high on the spread myself. I wouldn't take Oregon State's points in that regard. I think the Beavers will win somewhere between the 17 and 21 range. I think they'll win by about 3 scores. But regardless, I see this as a win for Oregon State, and I think they're going to be sitting, as I mentioned, 6-2, heading into conference play. Or heading into the bye week.
In the bye week, yeah. And I think a lot of people would take that, right? 6-2. Your only 2 losses coming to 2 of the 4 best teams in the conference. Overall, and the other one of the best teams in the conference, you get to play them at home,
right?
And the Ducks during the rivalry game in a few weeks. So yeah, I mean, I'm expecting the same thing, Brenden. I guess we'll see my exact score prediction on when I type it out probably tomorrow, but. The Beavers will win on Saturday. They absolutely will win on Saturday.
I mean, you think about it, people. I mean, there are people out there, TJ, who, subscribe to, very expensive betting advice. Meanwhile, TJ Mathewson, every week, man, he just picks every matchup. He's undefeated.
Except man. We don't pick against the spread. So if you went money line with me, then you'd be rolling in cash.
You go money line with TJ Mathewson.
Unfortunately, the laws in the state of Oregon and I guess the ethics of the business prevent from gambling on Oregon State sports. So
yes, you have to make your way to the Great Spirit Mountain Casino to roll that one.
Yes, you do. Yes.
So it's not impossible,
correct.
Right? I'll always advocate for the great casinos in our state. So any of you got to make your way out there. But all jokes aside, TJ's picks have been awesome this year, and I love getting to read what you and Dylan and what you guys think every week with BeaversEdge and our staff predictions. And obviously, it's been a busy time at BeaversEdge as TJ's been our boots on the ground, talking to the guys each and every week. Dylan just had a bit of a recap with a defensive end that was on campus this last weekend. Beaver's been hosting some more guys, and you think about it, TJ, with more wins starting to come on the football field, maybe some more wins on the recruiting trail as well. So it's going to be real exciting to see how those things come hand in hand.
Yeah, and Oregon State just launched their NIL collective. I think it's the
Woodshop.
No. Called the Giant Killers Collective.
Oh, yes.
Scott Sanders just launched it. Mike and John were talking to him on the show today. This is an interesting nugget. Do you know what JT Daniels asked the collective for when he came here, when they're still workshopping it? But he was here at practice, talking with Jonathan Smith. And this really interesting fact he said on our show today. JT Daniels and his family, and just how crazy this NIL world is today, and what quarterbacks are getting paid. Now this is again just through word of mouth, so not a confirmed actual number, but the request from the JT Daniels camp to come to Oregon State was a house and $400,000.
Yeah, steep. I mean, it's the world we live in now, right? And
it is. It was pretty crazy. And you know who has a higher passer rating this year than JT Daniels? Chance Nolan.
There you go.
So
right?
Figure.
I mean, you kind of piqued my interest. I might have to see if I can find any word of mouth on that as well. But on that expensive note, we'll go ahead and put a bow tie on this podcast. I want to go ahead and thank TJ Mathewson for joining me as always, man. It's awesome getting to talk Beavs with you every week, man. And awesome to hear about your 18-inning experience up there in Seattle, man. I'm sure that was epic, even though it didn't go the way of your guys, and still something I'm sure you'll never forget. I mean, for a multitude of reasons. So again, big thanks to jumping on the pod this week, man. Definitely looking forward to talking the Colorado game, and obviously we'll be back next week, even though the Beavers are on a bye. TJ and I will have some fun. We'll get into kind of some mid-season stuff. Maybe we'll talk a little bit of everything. We'll maybe do some NFL. We'll touch on a whole bunch.
We'll figure
of points
something
next
out.
week.
We'll figure something out.
And obviously look ahead to that massive matchup with the Washington Huskies up in Seattle at Husky Stadium. So that's going to be a dandy of a game. But this weekend, 5 p.m. At Research Stadium. Make sure to keep it locked to BeaversEdge.com for all the coverage leading up to the game. And this is Brenden Slaughter for TJ Mathewson signing off on this edition of the Edge Podcast.